Welcome to the Pagula Rasa podcast, a podcast where two friends try to plant some seeds of unity in a world which could use more of it. The podcast is being created by Dave and Jim.
This is Dave Blank. I'm a professional online educator in the sciences. This is my first foray into the world of podcasting as a co-primary creator. For a long time, I felt like I had something to say. And through Pagula Rasa, hopefully it comes out and helps make some positive change. I hope you enjoy it.
My name is Jim Esch. I am a writer and teacher of college English and creative writing. Since first grade, I knew that I loved making things with words, and I've never lost the passion for reading, writing, and publishing. I also have interests in music, songwriting, recording, and spoken word, too, and I am the producer of the Vinyl Essence podcast and the Eshorama podcast. And now I'm collaborating with Dave on Pagula Rasa. Since this is our first podcast, we thought it pertinent to introduce it to you and tell you what we mean by Pagula Rasa. We named our podcast as a play on words. It refers to the idea of tabula rasa, a phrase you're probably familiar with. In Latin, it means blank slate. The ancient Romans would write notes on wax tablets, the tabula, and blank them out by melting the wax and smoothing out the surface. That's the rasa. The Greek philosopher Aristotle suggested that the mind was like the tabula rasa in that it was the surface of anything potentially thinkable, and thoughts were like the letters and words written on the slate. This idea gets repeated. It also appears in diverse philosophical traditions: Stoicism, Persian, Islamic, Christian scholasticism, and the British empiricists like John Locke, who claimed that the mind does not come prefabricated. It is molded by sensory experience. Out of nothing, something comes. The notion is a little bit like the Chinese word pu, which means unworked wood. Pu is the wood's simple essence. In the Taoist tradition, pu is a metaphor for our natural state, unworked, simple, spontaneous. But there's more. Turns out there's another different meaning to the word rasa. In Sanskrit, rasa means literally juice, essence, the taste of something. Hindu aesthetic philosophers picked up this word and used it to describe the essence of an artwork, its essential flavor, as picked up by sensitive audience members who have enough heart to receive the feel of the performance. Rasa carries the perceiving one into hopefully a bliss state where their own essence is experienced and higher consciousness and moral awareness is reflected. So we find the blank slate concept somehow comforting, inspiring, reassuring, and fruitful. And we like the metaphorical turns you can take with it. So the concept of the podcast is simple. Two friends who grew apart in time and space have reconnected. They're bridging the distance and exploring by means of open conversation, meditation, monologue, reflection, the space between where impressions are received, seeds planted, and significance, we hope, will be found. So what comes out? Something from nothing. And you are a part of that story, listener. Maybe something flavorful, essential, and inspiring will be perceived in the space between us and you.
This podcast is being started in May 2020 in the midst of a seemingly never-ending pandemic. We are in month 3 of an economic standstill in the USA, with things just barely starting to open up. The idea to do this came from conversations we've had and wanted to continue having more publicly, and hopefully to include you. We're hoping in some small way to help positive change happen. Bright, shiny things. The best place to start, perhaps, is where you are. Where we are, there's really no beginning and no end, just lots of middles. The first seed we're going to germinate is a musical one. Or rather, it comes from music. For over 30 years, I've listened to the music of Jon Hassell. You hear this sometimes from people, but this guy literally wrote and performed a part of the soundtrack of my life. I acknowledged him in my PhD thesis. I have memories which are intimately entwined in his music. There are others, but I'll focus on him for this podcast. A few decades ago, he and I corresponded by email. I asked him about his inspiration, wanting to learn about the seeds from which his music grew. He shared that this process involved bright, shiny things that catch his attention, and then trying to maximize the time spent there, or to develop more bright, shiny things. I've been thinking about it a lot in the past decades and trying to mimic it. If he can do it, why not me? I try to notice those bright, shiny things in life and spend more time there as well. That's why I think Jim and I are having the best time creating this podcast. I work as a teacher, and I teach the scientific method. I ask students to apply it to their lives and report back with an example. Usually, this generates a set of mundane replies. A better way to get to work, how to get the dog to stop ripping up the rug. But once in a while, there's something deeper that comes from it, something which transcends the class and gets people to really think. And I think in a lot of ways, that's a bright, shiny moment for me in my job. During this pandemic, everybody's working from home, which is my natural state. My wife just visited me in my office lair to let me know about the imminent passing of a mutual colleague who has been ill for a long time. In that moment of sadness, I was reminded of the bright and shiny connection between her and me, something we've enjoyed for an incredible 18 years, laid bare and fresh before me. Out of this impending sadness, something good was remembered. It actually felt real and hopeful, at least to me. I'm sharing it to give you something to think about. It's something that's bright and shiny and deserves attention.
It's really interesting to hear that Jon Hassell uses that metaphor for his artistic process. I'm not exactly sure what he means by it. I think I have a hunch, but I can't quite put a name on it. You know, in my own art, writing music and so forth, I suppose I look for bright, shiny objects too, but right now I can't even name what those are. I think maybe I'm trying to gravitate towards something that I think I see or that interests me. But I certainly think you could apply this just to, day-to-day living and being in the world. And I'll give you a kind of a ridiculous example. I was walking the dog down the alley yesterday, and we saw a bunny rabbit coming towards us. Well, that's not unheard of to see rabbits around the neighborhood, but to see one running at us was kind of odd. That caught my attention. And then it sort of swooped off to the side and into a yard, and there was another rabbit, and the sort of aggressive bunny rabbit started circling around the rabbit in the yard, and he was putting the moves on that rabbit and starting to go through the motions. And we didn't stick around to see if that was consummated, but it was certainly something I had never seen before. And it was somehow comforting, uplifting, natural, spontaneous. and I felt connected to this little piece of nature. And we'll see. We'll probably see some baby bunny rabbits pretty soon. But in some strange way, that was a bright, shiny object that I noticed yesterday. And it made me feel good.
As you listen to this, what comes to your mind? What's bright and shiny for you? Feel free to share it on our website, padularasa.com. We hope to hear from you.
And there are a couple of ways to do that. You can head over to padularasa.com, click on the post for this show, and leave a comment in the comment box. Or you can shoot us an email. And you can email Dave at padularasa.com or Jim at padularasa.com. If we get some interesting feedback, we'll share it on an upcoming show. Thanks for listening to Padula Rasa, and we hope you will subscribe using your favorite podcasting application.